Just baseball show just got a whole lot more interesting. About an hour ago, I guess, 4 o'clock was the QO deadline. And it's going to get more interesting with the tender deadline and the 40-man roster deadline. You've got prospects that need to be added to the 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. That's a call-up conversation that we're going to have next week. This week on the call-up is all about the top 100. We did 20 to 11. We're doing 10 to 1 on Wednesday. We're doing newcomers on Thursday, and then risers and fallers on Friday. That's your Just Baseball programming update. But we're going to talk about the 4 guys that accepted the qualifying offer and then the rumor mill. As always, we're brought to you by the great folks at BetMGM, Jack McMullen, Aram Layton. It's funny when you go into the offseason, I thought this morning that this was going to be the first scrape it together show that we have this offseason, and those exist for sure. Like, we have a good content plan, in place. We'll do the playing GM after Thanksgiving, but I thought, okay, it's going to be pretty light. And then all of a sudden 4 guys accept the QO. Things change, man.
Oh yeah. It was funny. I was just talking about it on Sports Grid today. Like, Craig Mish was asking, like, oh yeah, how many guys do you think are going to accept the QO? 1, maybe 2. I'm surprised. I'm honestly very shocked. We're going to talk about Trent Gisham, and I think that's got to be the biggest surprise. I know there's one of the first comments we got. It's like, who was the biggest surprise? That one for sure, for a lot of reasons. I'll lay them all out. But I don't know. It adds such a fun wrinkle to free agency, because if it weren't for that, it'd be even more boring. And because it just takes so long for things to get going. Jeff Passan put out a piece for ESPN today saying that, just generally seems like we're not going to really see much happen until after Thanksgiving. Makes sense. Yep. But this was at least a little bit of an appetizer and a little refresher, and also gives us a little bit of clarity, right? This absolutely changes the Cubs offseason a little bit, probably makes them not spend anymore. They're probably punching air that Shota accepted as. The Yankees, I think they're still going to spend, obviously, but this does affect the way that they approach things now. So I'm excited to see, what kind of the fallout is from this, and, what the domino effect can be, across the board in free agency.
A lot of other good stuff from that Passan article, and we're going to talk about that on the back half of the show with the rumor mill, but we will start with the qualifying offers. And I have this pulled up from Russ Dorsey, who does a great job for Yahoo and also on the Apple TV Friday night telecasts. Since 2012, when the system was put in place, 144 players had been extended the qualifying offer. 14 of 144 had ever accepted. 4 players accepted today. You mentioned Shota Imanaga. You mentioned Trent Gisham. Brandon Woodruff, the Milwaukee Brewers, accepted, and Gleyber Torres accepted as well with the Detroit Tigers. This is a 1-year, $22.05 million deal. It's obviously the highest the QO has ever been. The QO continues to escalate. It will always escalate throughout the course of the CBA unless we have a complete overhaul, and then the QO may go down. I don't forecast that happening, but in the landscape of baseball, since this was implemented, the QO has always increased. And apparently, it's increased to a place where guys are more willing to accept. You tell me you get a 1-year, $22 million contract? That is nutso. And they have that. I'll start with Gisham here. We'll go Gisham, Shota, and then we'll go Woodruff is the quicker conversation, so we'll save him for last, but we'll go Gleyber Torres third. Let's start with Trent Gisham here, because I, for one, am stunned that Gisham accepted the QO. I know you said that off the top. He could have had himself a 5-6 year deal, I think, with how he played in 2025. This guy was flirting with 35 homers in 2025. Obviously, the defense took a step back from the perennial Gold Glove candidate level that he had been playing at previously, but this guy recouped so much offensive value in 2025. It was utterly insane. And now you've got this guy signing on for another 1-year, $22 million deal. I thought he could have 4X'd this payday.
Yeah, I think there's two components here. I think one is, just with 2027 looming and the impending lockout, does it affect maybe players that were probably going to be more on 3-4 year deals? Like, is their market not as robust? Because if I think for Kyle Tucker, the more I think about it, I don't know if 2027 affects his market as much, because it's going to be an 8-year deal, right? Yep. So it's just half of a season or a portion of a season of, an 8+ year deal. But if you're paying Grisham, for a 3 to 4 year deal, that's working against him. Then just the standard is that you have the draft pick compensation working against you, because any team that signs a player that was tendered a qualifying offer that they declined, you're going to have to give up a draft pick in compensation. So I think the combination of 2027 uncertainty and the draft pick being attached maybe affected a specific guy like Grisham's market a little bit more. But what's fascinating to me is he's 29 years old. He's coming off of a career year. You'd imagine that this is the best chance for him. I mean, all the models too, like there's a big difference for teams when a guy's 29 versus 30 going to 31. Like every agent is always trying to maximize their guy before he's 30 years old. That's not the case here because I think of these variables, but obviously there's a lot more qualified people educating Trent Gisham on this decision. So I do really just think it's the combination of the uncertainty in 27 with the draft pick attached on a guy that, even though it was this, incredible year, career year, he wasn't going to get more than 4 years, I don't think. And if half of 2027 is wiped out, that's what, 20% of your contract essentially, or 20% of the duration of your contract.
Yeah. I was thinking with the age factoring in, some team was going to pony up and give him 5 years. And my thought was, okay, 5 is probably better than a QO. I saw a question in the comments already here. Who was paying Grisham $22 million? Yeah, it was from our guy, Sean Donahue. Who was paying Grisham $22 million AAV? The answer is nobody, but the answer is total money would have worked in Grisham's favor 1,000%. He would have gotten a 4 or 5 year deal. The question is, was it 5? Like I'm thinking, and then all of a sudden 27 doesn't factor in as much? Or is it 3 or 4 like you're thinking, and then all of a sudden that's a 30-year contract that you're about to sign that doesn't make any sense for you and you may lose out. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing, and I'd be curious to know what these agents think as it pertains to the CBA, and what these agents and owners and GMs, what their conversations are like. We really haven't had much light shed on those types of conversations. Yeah. The light we have had shed on the CBA is Bryce Harper and Rob Manfred almost throwing hands in a clubhouse. That's really all we have on this. I would be curious to know if there is some serious smoke to contracts being altered because of what is upcoming and teams falling out of the pursuit for a 4 or 5 year player. If you have this looming and you either want the 10-year guy or you want the 1 or 2 year deal.
Yeah. And I think the defensive trend might be something that was part of the conversation with Grisham too, because if again, he's not defending the way that you hope in center field, now you're paying a guy to play a corner. Now he really needs to mash. Is he going to mash outside of Yankee Stadium? I don't know. So if Grisham really does believe that he can duplicate what he did last year, like, and he really feels like he found something, and the batted ball data does back it up, he's going to make more AAV, to Sean's point, this coming season. And if he follows that up, he can still get himself a 4-year deal. I would feel, even though he's a year older, I would feel better about giving Trent Gisham 4 years if he does it 2 years in a row, right? Yeah. Like if it's not this 1 year wonder on a contract year kind of thing. So I think that's the logic. He's taking the payday, removing 2 variables, because also he's going to hit the free agent market. I'm almost talking myself into this a little bit. Yeah. He's going to hit the free agent market without a draft pick attached to him next year, and without the uncertainty, because you're not going to sign probably until all that's figured out, I would imagine. Sure. I don't know. That's the part I don't know. But at least it would remove the draft pick compensation side of it, so teams would be more willing. Because Grisham's a good player, but when you got to take the risk of paying him over 4 years and you got to give up a draft pick, he's not. I don't know if he's worth all that. So that's where I think if he can follow this year up, there might not be a player with more pressure than Trent Gisham going into this year, because he's really got to prove it again.
Is this the Dennis Schroeder conversation, but for Major League Baseball? It could be the Dennis Schroeder. I'm going to bet on myself.
If it doesn't go well, yeah. Then it comes out. Someone's going to report, yeah, Gisham could have had a deal for about 4 years, $50 million, but instead he's on a 1-by-5 because he struggled after the QO. But no, I think it's betting on yourself, and like it's worked for guys in the past, but we'll see.
The closest comp that I can get to is, and obviously it didn't work out like this because it was good year, brutal year, maybe worst year in baseball, and then it was really good year, and then he signed a 3-year deal. But Jurickson Profar, his age 30 season, he was abysmal. But then he goes back to San Diego, has a great campaign, and then gets his 3-year, $42 million deal. That's a 1-year blip, but I think you're right. Proof of concept across 2 years is a hell of a lot stronger for you in free agency, even if you are 30 as opposed to 29 years old, and with some clarity, because I have no idea how this free agency thing is going to work out next offseason. I would be stunned if anybody signed before we went into a sort of lockout. Nobody's going to offer a contract before that.
No, I have no idea how that all works, but yeah, I imagine you're going to need some clarity on all that. How pissed do you think the Cubs are that Shota Imanaga accepted the QO?
Very. And I'm just thinking about, we talked about on the call up yesterday, you mentioned you run 1,000 simulations in your head thing, like that thought exercise. There are so many simulations where this is an ankle weight attached to the Chicago Cubs, and there are very few where they're looking at $22 million, and it's like, we got a steal for Shota Imanaga. I'm so happy he accepted that. This guy was really good in 2024 when he first came over, but then all of a sudden, the pitches dwindle down a little bit, and he's got a serious home run problem, and he's near unpitchable in the postseason. And you're signed up for 1 for 22 for him when this team could have been pursuing a Michael King or a Zach Gallen or acquiring a pitcher who has a large value attached to him via trade. There were so many other ways that they could find Shota Imanaga production on the external free agent and trade market. And they're sitting here, you're right, like, we're shit out of luck because Shota said yes. They probably shouldn't have done this.
Well, and again, it wouldn't be an issue if they weren't pretty stingy. Like, otherwise, it'd say, okay, Shota on a 1 year, we see pitchers that are, I think, have far less upside, make $15+ million all the time on 1 year deals. I wouldn't care. Like if money was not a factor, but you know that there's some sort of budget constraint here one way or another. And that just ate into the Cubs' ability to potentially make some other moves. Like I don't think bringing back Shota on a 1 year deal for the qualifying offer is in a vacuum a bad thing. I think he has bounce back capability. Worst case scenario, I still think he's going to eat some innings for you and be serviceable. But given the way that the Cubs are operating, I almost feel like, and we'll see, maybe they'll still spend anyways, but knowing that they have operated the way that they have operated, I almost wonder why they even bothered giving him the QO. Like, I know that you don't want to lose him for nothing, but once you decline that option, once you deemed him not worth 3 years, $57.75 million, I just don't know how it's just a slam dunk for 1 year, 22, when, you really want to try to make this team better. And this team can compete. Like, this team can be a World Series threat with a couple of the right moves this year. And I'm just afraid that this is going to stop the Cubs from actually making some more impactful moves, or even, making a full-fledged run at Kyle Tucker or doing some of these other things. So we'll see. But the good news is you get Imanaga, who's going to be hungry, trying to prove that he can bounce back with a lot of money to potentially earn. And you hope that, he can put it together there. But it's just, for a stingy team, $22 million is a lot of money.
By the way, did you see Tucker decline the qualifying offer? So he won't be returning to the Cubs.
Yeah, that's it. You don't think? Do you think they're going to give a final offer to him?
I just thought it was a little funny when you said they could fully pursue Kyle Tucker if this didn't happen. Are we sure? No, are we sure that was going to happen?
They should, but now it's like, no shot.
No way. My thing is, I was just looking at ways that you could piece this rotation together with guys that aren't like a carbon copy of what you already have. When they signed Shota Imanaga, we were looking at Shota and Steele. Obviously, they do different things, but these are two guys that rely on their four-seam fastball and throw left-handed and are not throwing 99 miles an hour. They're both sitting about 92, 93. Shota's a little bit harder. Matthew Boyd, another guy, throws with his left hand and is a bit more pitchability oriented than those other two guys. But it was just kind of like, oh, you've got a little bit of a deviation and then a little bit of a deviation. I want a different look. I want Michael King in this rotation. I want Gore in this rotation if you want another lefty, because Gore is way stuffier than anybody else you have in this rotation. There were just so many other ways you could go about, again, finding Shota. And Shota, when you look at the ERA and the innings totals, it was 145 innings at a 3.7. That's a pretty good year, serviceable year. But it's just not like
it's the way he finished that I think really has people nervous. And I think left Cubs fans very frustrated. I mean, he was giving up home runs left and right. That said, though, like I almost feel like he's become such a like, oh man, like we're stuck with him kind of guy.
He's not unusable, but it's just you probably could have brought him back 1 for 16, not 1 for 22.
Well, that's the thing is, if you don't extend him the qualifying offer and then, you let him you just let free agency go about.
Yeah.
You make him an offer for 16 or 17, see what happens. The thing that's interesting to me is if they could potentially try to shop him around, right? Like that could also be an option for them. But
so do you know the legality of this? I don't really know. I did a Google search and I was trying to figure out how that works. And it sounds like there's effectively a no trade and he has to waive the no trade. So he needs to consent to a deal to be moved on the QO.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, I don't think he would stop that from happening if it was a team that was aggressively looking to pursue some pitching.
I don't think so. We also just there's no sample to work with. Again, 14 guys had accepted the QO before this and now 4. None of those guys have been traded in that offseason. I don't even know if that's legal. I think you may need to wait until closer to the deadline. I have no idea if there's this 90-day no trade period where you sign a 1-year deal or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated by this situation. And I think the hope is that he was hurt, right? Like, and that just he wasn't really fully himself. He missed a little bit of time in June. And I think that's the hope. But at least they don't have still long-term commitment, for multiple years. And I think maybe they value Imanaga enough on a 1-year bounce back. So it was 21 home runs, by the way, over his final 15 games. So I think that's the big concern. Actually, sorry, I can make that stat worse. It was 24 home runs over his final 16 games. So that part is rough, but there's a chance that he could deliver some value still and be a decent arm for them. But you get Steele back. Yeah, there's a lot of lefties in that rotation.
Yeah. Thanks for making that stat worse, by the way. Do you see what started to perform terribly? Was it the secondaries or was it the four-seam fastball?
It was the fastball. I think just guys were clipping it more. And, the velocity was down a little bit throughout the year, but down the stretch, it wasn't down necessarily more. But the end zone whiff numbers weren't very good. I think he was almost around the zone too much and starting to miss over the middle. But the fastball, man, just in general, I just think it was getting clipped more. And you look at the final 13 starts, 13 of the 20 homers were via the fastball. So it just seemed like it wasn't getting by hitters the same way.
I think here's our answer. David said they can't trade him until June. That would make a bit more sense there. And again, I think Shota needs to consent to a deal if a trade does take place.
Go get a righty. Go find another righty, I think. And you're going to go. I mean, Steele's still not going to probably be back to the start of the year. And I think the thing that's funny with Imanaga is it's a 0.99 whip on the year. So he's not walking guys. Like, if he can just navigate around the long ball, he could still be solid.
I don't think it's unfair to say he's a good pitcher. Like, he's a good pitcher. Is he a $22 million pitcher? Probably not. But
no. But there's worse situations.
There are. Really good situation, I think, for Detroit. Gleyber Torres accepts the qualifying offer. That was a bit of a surprise to me. It was probably surprise 2 behind Gisham, because I thought Torres could have parlayed his 1-year prove it, in which he was an all-star and played for one of the best teams in the American League for the majority of the year. I thought he could have parlayed a 1-year deal into a 4-year deal. But again, this may be what you're talking about with Gisham, where the CBA's at play and all of a sudden a 4-year deal is a lot less sexy for teams. And maybe they scoured the market and said, you know what, let's bank $22 million and we'll assess after a possible lockout.
There's kind of an in-between range too, where a player is like probably a little bit too good to maybe accept the qualifying offer in a vacuum, but also not good enough to get, I think, teams lining up to pay him and give up the draft pick. And I really think the draft pick aspect weighs down a guy like Gleyber Torres, because you're already, going to pay him a little bit more than, I think you probably want, but that's how free agency goes. And you feel good about the floor and him being a solid player. But, for a guy that's going to be let's say he duplicates a year, 113 WRC plus, like, is that the player that you want to give up the draft pick compensation for? I don't think so. So that's the tough part with those guys, is I think the 3-4 year guys, that draft pick that hangs over them, I think weighs their market down a lot more.
That makes sense to me. Tiger's better for this. Does this limit their pursuit of a Bichette or a Bregman with Torres coming back? Or do you think they were always going to be in the hunt for Gleyber Torres along with those other guys?
I think they always were. And I'm trying to remember. I mean, Gleyber was a pretty expensive arbitration guy, right? In his final year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
I don't think it's that much of an uptick in pay from where he was at before. I think he got up there pretty high for a final arb number. I think they should still be, in play for some impact, additions here. But yeah, it's also still one of those situations where it's another team I just don't totally know what their plan is. But they have so many controllable pieces. There's not that many expensive players on their team. Like, they should be, I think, aggressively trying to make another move.
Yeah. Last guy that accepted the QO, Brandon Woodruff with the Milwaukee Brewers. Brandon Woodruff is going to be 33 years old on opening day. In 64 2/3 innings coming back from a major shoulder issue, Brandon Woodruff had a 3.2 ERA. Brandon Woodruff was also punching out 11.5 per nine. He was walking fewer than 2 per nine. This guy, we talked about Bieber being immune to the whole Tommy John recovery, the uphill battle thing. Woodruff might be immune to any major shoulder issue. This guy is just Mississippi good hater. Like, it's so funny. Roll the ball out. He'll give you 6 innings, a 1-run ball. Woodruff getting 1 year 22.05 for a team that already doesn't spend too much coin. It sounds a little wonky off the top, especially when Bieber said yes to 16. That feels crazier now that Woodruff got that. But for me, I think this was like a show of good faith by Milwaukee. This has been their guy, and they could have Brandon Woodruff until he hangs it up. It seems like he's willing to play that game with them.
Yeah, I was just kind of worried at the end of the year, then he had a lat issue. It's just like, okay, is he going to be able to stay on the field? When he is on the mound, I think I agree. Like, whether it's 95 or 92, he's going to get outs and he's going to be productive. But I'm worried that, okay, he finally makes his way back, and then, you miss him in the postseason with a lat issue. Is he going to be able to be available and throw? Because in Passan's piece, he said, if Woodruff accepts the QO, Peralta is much more likely to be moved. Can you count on 150 innings from Brandon Woodruff? And if he's hurt and you move Peralta, puts you in a tough spot. That's where I'm like, from a caliber of pitcher standpoint, if you could guarantee me 100 and even 130 innings, I'm fine with it at $20 million, $22 million. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in him being able to stay healthy. I mean, it was a war, some bad luck, but it was a war to even get through his rehab assignment. He just kept getting hurt with different random things. And I think he had a comebacker. So there's some bad luck too. But then he comes back and, again, deals with the lat issue.
I love this note from Dawson. I brought up the stat earlier, just so funny to me. Woodruff now joins Christian Yelich and Jordan Montgomery as the only players in franchise history to make more than $20 million in a yearly salary. Apparently, Ryan Braun was at exactly $20 million for a few years. So exclusive company for Brandon Woodruff, it seems. I hear you on the injury concern because it was such a major issue, but it's also one issue. Right? It hasn't been a myriad of injuries. He had it at the end of 22, or was it a different issue in 22? Because I know it hampered him in 23.
I think it's been different shoulder stuff.
Different shoulder stuff. So it's the same part of the body, but this guy was
But
in
the
21.
rehab, I think the
Yeah.
rehab, like he had a comebacker, and then he had like an ankle issue, and like so this past year, like there was a few delays because of that, but there wasn't like arm setbacks or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, worth a shot. Obviously, just a glue guy for that team as well. I really hope I like him on that. Again, if all things are equal, I don't care. Like the money shouldn't matter too much. He has absolutely the ability to deliver on that value or exceed that value. But if the fallout of Woodruff accepting is then you being more likely to trade Peralta, your team got worse.
Yes. Yes, 100%. All right. Those were the 4 guys that accepted the QO. Got a lot of good stuff from the passing article that dropped earlier today. We also have just the rumor mill swirling about. So we're going to go through that rapid fire on the back half of the show. Before that, quick whoosh. Peter loves that whoosh. Sometimes I give it to him like 3-4 times in a row, and he's like a baby that you keep on like doing the eyes open thing too, where he's like again, and he starts clapping. It's so funny. But yeah, he loves whoosh. And again, I gotta put in the ask for a call up whoosh too. That would be fun. But I do want to start with, maybe the biggest hypothetical bomb that Passan dropped in that ESPN piece. The Pittsburgh Pirates are all in? Question mark. They apparently offered Naylor a contract worth just under $80 million in total value, which would blow past their previous best free agent spend. It was Francisco Liriano in 2014. I think it was $30 million or so, but Liriano in 2014, shy of $40 million, was their
3
highest
years, 39.
spend. 4 for 39 is our highest spend on a free agent deal ever. And they offered Naylor just under $80 million. And now they're looking to add, allegedly, they're interested in Kyle Schwarber, who would pummel baseballs into the Allegheny. Schwarber and O'Neal Cruz would be hilarious. And oh, by the way, there was also a thought that Connor Griffin could compete for the opening day shortstop job. This is more aggression than we've ever talked about on the Just Baseball show when it pertains to the Pirates.
That was the part I liked the most, because I was thinking about this the other day, and I was asked a question of what are the chances that, we could see Connor Griffin, break camp, or like, when do you see him coming up? And like, it was breaking my brain, because I think there's a very obvious case to push him aggressively, because he's just a special talent. He's putting up numbers at each stop that is reminiscent of some of the best prospects and some of the best players that we've seen in the game. And you look at the situation in Pittsburgh, like he doesn't even have to be near his ceiling to help them offensively, and potentially get them, the PPI side of things as well. So I like that. I think that is also being mentioned in the hope of painting this complete picture, because my first thought is, well, why would anyone want to sign there? If you're Kyle Schwarber, why the hell would you go to the Pittsburgh Pirates? I would take less money to go to Philly. And I'm not trying to pile on the Pirates. I'm just like, let's just call it what it is. Like, what have the Pittsburgh Pirates done to make you feel like you should hitch your wagon to that franchise for the next 4 years? I understand they have a young talent, and I'm really excited about the future of that franchise from on paper perspective. But would you want to hitch your wagon to the Pittsburgh Pirates for 5 years? I wouldn't, theoretically. So like, that's where I wonder what free agents are going to want to sign there. And I think maybe painting the picture of, hey, we're going to call up our number one prospect. We're going to do all these different things. This is a different time here. That helps. I think Paul Skeen's existence helps. But I am interested. Like, great, you're going to pursue Kyle Schwarber, but which of these higher end free agents are actually going to want to go there is my question. And I think it's going to be them needing to overpay somebody.
It's probably not Schwarber, but I saw this name brought up in the comments. Like, would an Eugenio Suarez be interested in that kind of situation? I think yes, because Suarez can play third base there. Triolo's the third baseman right now, but Triolo won a utility Gold Glove in 2024. He can just move around. They moved off of Brian Hayes. Suarez, when you look at power production, could make a ton of sense, especially when your other premier power bat in that lineup is O'Neal Cruz, who hits left-handed. So you pair him with a right-handed bat. I feel like there are guys in that tier that could be convinced to be a Pittsburgh Pirate. But a Schwarber, if the Boston Red Sox and the Philadelphia Phillies are having a bidding war and then Pittsburgh comes in $10 million higher in total money, you're going to choose one of Boston or Philadelphia, it seems. But I don't know. Like there's an allure to playing in front of the pierogi race every day. Potato Pete, sauerkraut Saul.
I mean, it's an amazing ballpark. I think there's, it's a great fan base that just has been wronged.
Yeah.
So, I think there's positive redeeming qualities. I think Suarez is the kind of deal that makes a lot of sense. It's the player that objectively makes your team better, but also comes with some yellow flags and concern. Like plenty of teams are going to be like, I don't know if I want to do this. That's the one where you just say, okay, I'll do it.
Speaking of flags, how about this? How about Murakami to the Pirates? If they're in the Eugenio Suarez waters, why couldn't they be in the Murakami waters?
Because it would require 7 or 8 years. And if they are hit, or at least 6, and if they are attached to a player who maybe doesn't reach his potential and they're paying him money like that, they're not going to be able to do anything for a half decade.
Yeah.
But otherwise, but if not, then roll the dice. I mean, I'd be here for it. I see them needing to pursue the players that make them better, but a lot of teams are kind of skeptical of, which would be like a Gino Suarez deal, because you don't know if he's going to be able to match that. A Luis Arias, who just makes you better because you don't have bats, but a lot of teams would say, I don't know if I like, where he's at. Like, I think those are the types of players, but Okamoto could make a lot of sense too. And that could be a fun player as well. So I think there's a lot of middle tier free agents for them to be able to go, shopping for. And what's nice is like, you've got Suarez, you've got Okamoto, who will probably make similar amounts of money, and you can kind of make a run at both.
Yeah. You mentioned Paul Skeens' existence could certainly help a free agent push. I'm curious, do Bubba Chandler and Connor Griffin and Jared Jones's existence also help that push? Or is it really just like, I get to play with the best pitcher on the planet? There's so much unproven when it pertains to Bubba and Jones, and there's everything unproven as it pertains to Griffin.
I think only in the sense of, when you sit down and have a conversation with Charrington or whoever, that's pitching you on, why you should sign the deal with the Pirates. It's painting the picture of what they can be and what they're building towards, and selling and saying, hey, we've got these controllable young pieces. We think Connor Griffin is, and I'm sure you've seen him play too. We think he's, one of the next stars in the game. We already have the best pitcher in the game. We have, several other arms that are really exciting. Help us take this next step. Like, I think in that way, yes, but I don't know how much, a 34-year-old Gino Suarez is, gravitating towards a team because he looks at the roster resource and sees, Bubba Chandler on there. But I think they could piece it together here between, it's not the sexiest moves in the world, but if you get one of Okamoto or Suarez and let's say Arias, and then you call up Connor Griffin, this team's a heck of a lot better. And if they pitch to their, full capabilities and some hitters take a step forward, they could be pesky.
Yeah, I love this shout. The Rust Belt, Ohtani and Trout, Paul Skeens and Connor Griffin. That would be very, very funny. Okay, other good stuff from that Passan article. I saw the name Brandon Nimmo in there, and I got a little confused, but I also understand if David Stearns wants to work off of that possible money. He mentioned, obviously, a couple of trade candidates for the New York Mets, one of which is Kodai Senga, who is, quote, extremely available. Of course, he's extremely available. Another is Jeff McNeil, and McNeil we've kind of looked at as a sitting duck. McNeil is going to be this year's Alec Bohm. These guys, it's like, okay, how many mocks can you put together to get Jeff McNeil off the New York Mets? But Nimmo was the one that caught me by surprise.
Yeah, I get it, because you have, and we've talked a lot about Carson Benj, and I think he's a guy that can actually help them quite soon. And but at the same time, if Carson Benj gives you 25 homers in a 114 WRC plus and 3 F4 next year, he's a rookie of the year, strong rookie of the year candidate, and you're jumping up and down. You're thrilled. But Ben just able to play center field, and Nimmo at this stage isn't. I just don't think at a very high clip. He only played center field like 5 games last year as well. This body just seems to be breaking down a little bit on him too, and I just don't know how many teams, even though he put together another decent or solid season, I just don't know how many teams are lining up to take on. It's not a bad contract by any means, but it's a financial commitment over a pretty decent amount of time, right? He's owed $20.5 million every year for the next till 2030, right?
So you say it's not a bad contract. Does it turn into a bad contract in 29?
I think it could. On the open market right now, let's say he's hitting free agency right now. He's gonna be 33 years old in 2026. Nimmo, would you give him 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, like $105 million, $104 million?
No, now that we think about it that way, good creative thought, Aram. No, absolutely not. So yeah, I guess that would be tough.
5 years, $105 million.
I really don't think I would.
I wouldn't. And I mean, we just saw Trent Gisham take the QO again. Nimmo, better player, but trending downwards. I think they're going to struggle to move that contract, and at this point, you're also going to struggle to replace 3 WAR. So I don't really get that one, to be honest.
Yeah. How movable is McNeil for you? If Nimmo is it's a struggle to move him, Jeff McNeil should be a little bit easier when you look at McNeil and what he's owed. Jeff McNeil is at 16.7 this year, 15.7, pardon. And then he's got a club at 15.7 in 2027.
So
do you think that? Yeah.
1 year, 17 essentially, because it's a $2 million buyout or 18 million. You could pay that down. I think anything in a 1 year realm is movable, right? Like I would imagine so. I
would think so.
I really struggle to figure out what Jeff McNeil is worth though. Like is that contract like completely underwater? I don't think so. He was a 2 WAR player last year. He was an above average bat, and he played every position on the field essentially. He played second, center, left, right, first. If they paid that down a little bit, or you could send a contract you don't love the other way, I think they could move a McNeil. I do. I think there's a lot of teams that would just value the versatility, the bat to ball, and just having a vet there. And the quality of contacts wasn't really any worse last year. I think by some measures, he was better last year than he was the last 2 seasons.
I'm just trying to think about who he is. I'm just trying to figure that out. When you close your eyes and see Jeff McNeil on your baseball team, if you're an opposing GM or even an opposing manager, who do you see? Do you see an everyday second baseman that's hitting leadoff? Do you see a utility guy that's hitting second? Or do you see a guy hitting sixth that is playing 5 of the 6 games a week?
I think if my team is first division team, I'm thinking a utility guy that's kind of hitting in the 6 hole. But I think there's also a world where if you have a gaping hole at a certain position, or somebody goes down and McNeil's thrusted into a more prominent role, I think you're okay with that, and that's a pretty good player to fill in there. Because even in his subpar offensive seasons, he was still giving you above average value because of, he's not the defender that he was, but the fact that he can plug in at different spots and hold his own. So, I mean, even the fact that he wasn't great out there, but that he could plug into center and hold it down, I think is valuable. But I think at this stage of his career, McNeil's best is kind of a super utility type that's still playing, 5 times a week. But that's where I see him more as.
Got you. Real quick, we got a donation. Thank you very much, Ben. What do y'all think Walker Buehler gets? Weird one. Obviously, Walker Buehler, friend of the program. I hope he gets a freaking bag. It seems like it's going to be a 1-year prove-it deal wherever he may go. I just wonder what kind of team will pursue that. Probably one with a vacant spot in their rotation, and they want durability there. I could see it being a team projected to finish bottom half of Major League Baseball that views him as a $10 million trade chip at the deadline.
Yep. Yeah, and I think I could see, one that's interesting to me is the Astros, because
Mhm.
it's a team that, I think competitive. I think we'll because you mentioned the bottom half, and I agree. Like, I think there'll be teams lined up at the opportunity to bring Walker in,
For a playoff
flip him at
push.
the
Yeah.
deadline, whatever it may be. But I'm thinking, like, can some still competitive teams sneak their way into this conversation? And the way that the Astros have been able to help guys in kind of the second phase of their career,
Yeah.
just optimize a little bit. I wonder if that becomes a good fit there. And it's a team that could use a Walker, but if it doesn't totally work out, they've still got their other main guys, but he could also still push them over the top, and they still need some innings. So that's one that I think could make some sense. And I imagine, I mean, just basing off everything we know about Walker, I think he'd like Houston. I think he'd like the town out there. So
I think so.
I
He
think
seems like a Texas guy.
yeah, I was gonna say,
He's from Lexington, but he totally
he
seems
does. He
like a
seems
Texas guy.
Texas to me. So that's the one I could see. But and maybe even the Rangers too, because I think some teams that maybe are up against it salary wise, and don't have a ton of money to shell out for a pitcher, like that could be a nice buy low opportunity.
And how many T-shirts would you sell if it's Walker Texas Ranger? Come on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a slam dunk there. Easy marketing tactic. Another guy, you mentioned Houston. I thought this guy would be a really good fit for Houston if they can make it work. Apparently, Kris Bubic is semi-available. Kansas City is on the pursuit of offensive firepower, and they feel like Bubic, coming off an all-star year, could be on the move. He is a fascinating study with what happened at the end of the year. Bubic was amazing. I was thinking Bubic was going to be a massive prospect haul. But then a shoulder issue pops up for him at the end of the year, and it sidelines him for the remainder of the season. So there's some baggage there.
Yeah.
Assuming all medicals are clear, if Kansas City does actively pursue trading Bubic for offensive firepower, I feel like it's a lot of those similar fish that we're talking about. I feel like Houston would be very interested in the services of Kris Bubic, and some other teams too that may not be willing to pay $15 million for a certain guy.
Yeah, just how do you value a pitcher who had shoulder issues on the heels of Tommy John surgery? As good as he's been, right? Like, and I think the interesting thing though is, Bubic is funky and doesn't need like as much, I think, of like the sheer velocity to still be very effective. But rotator cuff strain, maybe he's fine. Maybe he comes back and we'll have a totally normal season, and it seems like he's full-fledged ready to go. But not having the chance to like show it in games, what is his value? And if you're a team, are you willing to risk that? Like, is he can he throw a private bullpen for you? Like, what does that look like?
Right.
But I guess you can say, like, what's he looking like right now, and in sides, and find out and kind of get an idea. But that said, I also find it interesting because, like, the other side of it is, okay, I understand you want offense, but Bubich is still a key piece in this rotation where Cole Reagan's also had a shoulder issue late in the year. Michael Wacha is not getting any younger. Seth Lugo is not getting any younger. So if I'm a team talking to the Royals, I say, why do you want to move this guy? I understand you need offensive help, but I don't know. It'd make me a little bit just skeptical. It's not like they have a litany of arms, coming up to the minors. Noah Cameron, I said it when he was a prospect, but like one of the more underrated left-handed pitchers, and now he's one of the more underrated left-handed pitchers in Major League Baseball. He was fantastic last year. Should have got more Rookie of the Year love. But when you look at their just pitching depth in that overall situation, maybe they really buy into what Ryan Berger did there, and even Stephen Kolek at times, and maybe that's enough for them.
The other thing is maybe they like this free agent market. Maybe they like the depth of pitcher on the free agent market, and
more than the bats. Yeah,
more than the bats, because the bats, like, it seems like there are two guys kind of to fill each position, and after that, you're looking at guys that are probably getting 1-year deals or even split deals. The starting pitching market does seem pretty depthy, and at the top, it's not like they have the superstar pitchers, but even like a Cody Ponce is apparently going to get a 2-3 year deal. A guy like Walker Buehler, like, maybe Kansas City feels more comfortable doing that across 1 year than finding a bat that is just going to be brutal. A good trade partner that I'm thinking about, because Kansas City has shown a willingness to take on some payroll. How about Tampa Bubich for Brandon Lau?
Ooh. I think
Again, I don't really know how to evaluate Bubich, but like maybe a prospect on Tampa.
Yeah, side? you get a prospect or something else as well. That could be fun. Because I think you could get a lot on top of that, to be honest. I like in terms of like a solid prospect on top or another piece on top. So that could be a good fit. I was thinking about just in general, like I think just so many teams would be lining up with the opportunity to just add an arm like that at that cost if the prospect demand isn't too high. Because again, that's just my question is like the health. So if you're just dumping the contract of a Brandon Lau and then adding some prospects on top, like the Rays are probably managing a little bit of a tight 40-man situation anyways. I know that's going to already be behind us, but I'm sure they have plenty of guys that are going to be 40-man eligible next year that they would probably want to move. Like they could definitely put something together there that could be interesting. I think the Astros, as you mentioned, like another team that would fit on the Bubich front. I'm trying to think of other teams that fit that bill. The Cubs would make a lot of sense, and maybe because of the injury, you don't have to part with this high level of prospects there. But like, who from the big league team would the Cubs potentially move? Because this would be like a big leaguer for big leaguer trade, which we don't get a ton of.
I would think so.
So who would it be? Like, who could they move?
I don't know.
Maybe it's an upper minors guy. Like maybe a Kevin Alcantara could be intriguing enough for them. I don't know.
Could be. I mean, do they want another guy that throws with his left hand? It's amazing. Every single person we talk about with the Cubs is like lefty.
That's true. We were just talking about that. We were literally just talking about that. So yeah, I don't know.
I'd be curious, what a Cub package would look like. But the one that just jumped right into my mind was you have questions about Lau, you have questions about Bubich. Like, what if those two partnered up and made a move there and it's not intra-division? I kind of dug it. Another report from earlier today, couple of Rangers, maybe non-tendered, maybe they're moved for scraps. Adolis Garcia and Jonah Heim. Heim is projected to make about $6 million next year in arbitration. Adolis is projected to make about 12 in arbitration. If you're sitting here as an opposing decision maker, what are you more willing to do? Take on Heim for 6 or Adolis for 12? Or neither?
I mean, I don't really want either, but Heim for 6. As worst case, you got a backup catcher for 6. What is Austin Hedges making this coming year? I think something close to that, but also Hedges is obviously
he's also a rover and a coordinator and the catching coach too.
Correct. The other one I was just thinking about too is like the Red Sox could make some sense for Bubich because again, it's not a proven big league bat, but maybe like the password who's big league ready at least.
Love.
Maybe you can workshop a deal that gets you Jarren Duran. And I don't know, maybe that could almost be an even swap. I don't know.
I have so many questions about Bubich's health.
That's
where like if I have a health question, Duran for Bubich is not an even swap.
Yeah, but you workshop something that could make sense there. Like that's another team that I think there's maybe I don't know where he would fit in because of the DH situation, but a Casas conversation could be interesting. That's just one other team. But sorry to get back to the point. I think Adolis is that's not a deal you're taking on at 12 mil at this point anymore. It's just there's too many free agent bats that I'd rather take a shot on at less money, the same money, or even more money. That I just think we've had enough runway here to see if Adolis Garcia could bounce back, and I just don't know if it's in the cards. And if it is in the cards, it's going to be via change of scenery. But I mean, we're talking about not only back-to-back below average offensive years, but he was worse last year than he was in the down year the year before. So I think some of it may be the league adjusting to him. I think some of it just might be being on the other side of 30. I think some of it may be the injuries, but I don't have a lot of confidence that Adolis Garcia is going to be an everyday player, and at $12 million for a year, he needs to be a good one.
Real quick. Like, can I just ask you what happened to him? Because I'm looking at some of the standard metrics, and there's not too many glaring differences from when he got MVP votes and was an all-star. Offensively, this guy per the advanced metrics. Ground ball rate hasn't skyrocketed. It was 38% in 23, and in 25, it was 37%. So it's pretty much the same. Hard hit rate was 49.7 in 23. It was 46.8 in 25. Average exit velocity was identical to 23 this past year at 92.1 miles an hour. What happened with him?
It's a great question. I think my guess is that the swing decisions, which have never really been good, fully got exploited as I think the game plan just got put together for him, right?
And the big difference is his walk rate's down 5%. It was 10.5% in 2023. It's 5% in 25.
And that's the thing for me, at least that I look at, is I just think pitchers kind of figured out that he's going to get himself out. He's going to chase a ton. He really struggles to lay off of spin. And I just think it became a little bit easier to, attack him. Also, I just think he slowed down a little bit. Four-seamers have just given him trouble. I don't know, why at 32 that's necessarily happening, but four-seamers have just given him trouble and velocity has given him trouble. So I think it's a little bit of both, but I do really believe that just the iffy approach kind of reared its head here finally.
I would say Heim what happened, but it's easier to see. Team's going to acquire him as a backup catcher. The question is, are they going to do it for $6 million? If I were to bet, I would say they both hit the open market and they're non-tendered.
I would think so. I would think so. I think Heim has a better chance. Just catching is obviously such a premium, but I think both hit the market. And from the Rangers side, I think it's the right thing to do. I think this is a team that's still in win now mode, but I think they've spent a lot of money. They have a lot of financial commitments, and I'm sure they're up against it a little bit. And you need to clear up some money. Here's $18 million that you can potentially reinvest into your ball club. Maybe go get that back end starter. Maybe address the offense a different way. I mean, with that 18 million, you might be able to go get, some of the free agents that we were talking about as targets for the Pirates, because it's on an annual basis here. So that's where I think it does make, a lot of sense financially. And, but the Rangers are in kind of a tough spot with some of the vets on this roster. You're stuck with Jock Peterson too. So may as well clear up a little bit of money.
Yeah, they whiffed on Jock. It seems like they sort of kind of whiffed on Berger too. There were a couple of guys that they just swung and missed at. It's hard for me to wrap my head around them being 2 years removed from being one of the best offenses that we've seen in recent memory and winning a World Series to everybody gone. Leody Taveras was just bouncing around, and Heim is probably getting non-tendered, and Adolis is probably getting non-tendered. There are just so many pieces that are just going away so damn quickly.
Yep. It feels like 2023 was a really, really, really long time ago, I think, for Rangers fans. And not because it's been a disaster or anything, just because that team, it kind of was a fever dream for some of these guys. And you hope Evan Carter is going to return to form and stuff like that too, but it just feels like across the board, there was so many just unique circumstances that haven't really come back to fruition in 2024, 2025.
Yep. All right. Couple more things here. We have this year's Clay Holmes. It's Brad Keller. Brad Keller was a really good reliever for the Chicago Cubs. He was their closer. Apparently, Brad Keller is fielding interest as a starting pitcher. Is this a Clay Holmes offseason for Brad Keller, or is this a Jeff Hoffman offseason for Brad Keller, where he wants to be a starting pitcher, but then he's a closer anyways?
I think he should just be a reliever. And I think that's probably what teams ultimately do. I understand the walk rate was respectable at 8%, but you look across the arsenal and it's a 63% strike rate overall, but the command of the secondary is his slider and sweeper, he landed for a strike 57% of the time. It is a good arsenal, right? You got the four-seamer, you got a slider, a sinker, a sweeper, and a changeup. But this is another instance where I don't know if the fastball is going to play as well at 95. And maybe he doesn't tick down. Maybe he holds 97 as a starter. It might be hard to do that. I don't know if the fastball plays the same way. Sometimes I just think if you figured something out and you're good in the spot you're in, you're 30 years old, might make sense to just keep building on that. But I can also understand because the earning potential is, just so much higher.
It's higher. Do you think the earning potential pushed Hoffman to 3 for 33? Like if Hoffman just entered the offseason last year as a closer, was he getting 3 for 33? I still think yes. I think he got paid like a closer.
Yeah, and I think he would have got more. I'm curious what the initial deals were for him before, the medicals, because he agreed with the Orioles and the Braves before
Yes.
failing the physicals.
I think he agreed. It might have just been Baltimore.
Okay, I thought there was something with the Braves as well. But sorry, my dog is going crazy on the other end right now. But yeah, I thought it was something with the Braves as well. But regardless, I think that was something that probably drove it down a little bit. It's worth a shot, but I don't know if I'm a huge fan of turning Brad Keller back into a starter.
It was just there were so many years of it being so not good that you just can't do it. Like he's just a reliever.
I think it's working because the stuff all ticked up.
Yeah. Kona loves Brad Keller as well. Thank you, Froggy Fresh, who still has me as his profile picture. That fires me up.
I love it.
Last but not least, we've got 2 guys expected to be posted tomorrow. Tetsuya Imai and Kazuma Okamoto are expected to enter their 45-day posting window. That would close on January 2nd. So we're probably going to see both of them sign around the winter meetings or shortly thereafter. It's just exciting to actually see the wheels in motion on this kind of thing.
Well, especially because we actually have definitive timelines. That's why I love the posted players, because we know when they have to sign by. We don't need to worry about we don't need to worry about Boris kicking the can down the road into spring training and beyond. Like he can't. So that part's fun. But I've been trying to figure out Imai, and he is really unique. I'm just going to have to continue to watch more video and sift through everything because I can't fully decide where I stand on him. But regardless, what I think is abundantly clear is the floor is really high with this guy, and he's going to eat a lot of innings. He's going to be a solid arm. And I think given the starting pitching market, he might provide kind of a really good 1B option. Like he's tier 1, but like maybe you can get him a little bit cheaper than maybe some of the other top arms in the market. I'm interested to see who's going to be the highest. We said Cease is going to be the highest paid free agent now, probably pitching wise.
We were talking about Cease, maybe Framber Valdez. I said that he could be the highest paid free agent pitcher if his GM meetings went well. He was in Vegas talking to all these decision makers, and it was really like trying to save his ass from that one pitch. And again, that might have been an $80 million pitch that he threw to Cesar Salazar.
Yeah, that is, and hopefully he was able to, I think, rectify that a little bit. But
maybe,
yeah, it's interesting because I think with the success, and I think Yamamoto is just a different caliber pitcher. That is abundantly clear to me here. In comparing these 2 guys, and it's not because of what Yamamoto has done in the big leagues. Just from evaluating them from what I saw in NPB, Imai is good, really, really solid, very talented. But Yamamoto it was just a different beast.
But you like Yamamoto way more than you liked Sasaki when Sasaki was coming over, and you liked Sasaki, but you didn't love him to the level of Yamamoto. Is Imai on the Sasaki train, is he a little bit lower?
It's different because I feel like the ceiling is lower, but I mean, I think the floor is just so much higher. So I would say Imai is safer in that regard, but doesn't have the injury history to come with him as well. But I think just when you have an 80 grade pitch and an outlier pitch and you can throw 100 when you're right, the ceiling of Sasaki's higher. But I would feel more comfortable giving Imai 7 or 8 years compared to giving Sasaki at the time that, and I think that's validated now. But yeah, I'm excited to break it all down because I think it's going to be fascinating to see where his market gets driven up to, and I think it will get driven up pretty high though. There is a chance that Imai ends up being the highest paid of all of them because of his age, right? At 27 years old, and I do think just the success that pitchers have had now kind of coming over. And even the way that Sasaki was able to finish the year, I wonder if that's going to embolden teams a little bit more to feel confident, giving out a longer term, higher paying deal.
It could very well. All right, folks, we kept you for pretty much an hour exactly. We're at 59:34 right now. That is gas. Thank you for joining us. Every link you need is in our episode description. I'm going to fill for the next 18 seconds to get us to an hour exactly. If you want to join our Discord, please do that. The link is in our episode description. Aram's Top 100 update is live at the end of last week. It was live. So we're breaking all that down on the call up. Stay tuned. And this is a real rough landing here. And we've gone over an hour. We'll talk to you soon.